What is going on YouTube? Chrono here, and welcome back to another PSO2 video. So today we'll be going over everything you need to know for weapons, as far as what you should prepare for, what you should grab early, and what you should realistically just skip over altogether when it comes to Slayer in PSO2. But if you're new to these, as always, my name is Chrono. I primarily cover PSO2 content. Would much appreciate a subscribers. Work our way towards that 10K mark, hopefully by the end of this year. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. It has been a while since we've been on this page. We do these fairly often in the past. These are basically kind of similar or akin to weapon progression videos, with a bit of a twist. So Slayer is going to be out in the next few days, and honestly, I think this is like one of the best decisions. I've seen people complain against this, which doesn't make any sense to me. But SEGA, in an actual rare W, I say rare W because a lot of times it's a little bit of an L or a little bit of like kind of a midpoint, right? But in a super rare W, they made a really good call on releasing the weapons early. Now, hear me out. Some of you guys are going to disagree. I get where you're coming from, but let me explain. So by releasing Gunblades early by a week, they've allowed players to effectively farm them and bring their costs down. That way, people, when they're coming in to play the new class, they're not fighting against the market about getting a hold of their weapons. Now, granted, yes, if you're playing ahead of time, you can get a hold of the preparation tickets, and the preparation tickets you can use to get your weapons that way. However, some people have been just waiting for this class to come out to play it, and the ability to be able to go and grab a weapon off the market because people have been farming these and they're not super expensive is pretty awesome. I mean, granted, right now I think the Justitian Gunblades, which we're going to talk about in a little bit here, they're, I think, by like the default ones right now on ship 2 are, I want to say, like 600 700k last time I checked, which is expensive comparatively to the other ones, but that is substantially more manageable than if the weapon, like if the class had just come out, people were leveling it up, getting to max level, and then trying to go farm afterwards. These people would be looking at these weapons costing anywhere between like 5 to 6 mil. So definitely a W in my opinion. It does allow people who want to farm to make some money, but at the same time, those of you guys who are looking just to play the class when it pops up, it's not as difficult for you. But again, the prep tickets do help out there too, and we're going to talk about what you should use those on as well. So to start things out, let's go ahead and head over to the Gunblades. Well, actually, you know what? Let's do the units first. It's very simple, very straightforward. There are two paths you're going to be looking at whenever you're leveling your Slayer. Either you're going to be leveling it from scratch from the very bottom and working your way up. If that's the case, the units you're going to be using primarily, you can have either Renesia and use those. Honestly, I kind of clutched my Renesia units all the way until I got all the way up. Where are they? To the Schwarzet units at level 31. Realistically, all the stuff in between really wasn't necessary. I was pretty much good here and pushed all the way up to Schwarzets. After Schwarzets, skipped over this here, moved into Belgrins and grabbed some cheap ones personally. If not Belgrins, you can wait just a little while longer, push yourself up as far as levels go, and move into the Aphetis. The Aphetis are pretty good. Now, if you're someone who doesn't spend a ton of money on your gear, Aphetis is going to be pretty much what you want to go for, because these do drop with mastery. If you grab them from red chests, it's pretty inexpensive to get a hold of, and people do tend to sell these off when they don't use them anymore. But if not, your end game is going to be looking like Eclairu or Ajax. Between these two, it just depends on your personal preference. I say Eclairu personally because it's 4% across the board. Realistically, that 5% damage resistance doesn't really mean very much in current armor setups. So I would say that's totally worth. If you're someone who's like, I really don't want to get killed, or if you're like, I tend to take too much damage as it is, Ajax is perfectly fine. Everything else, realistically, if you're looking at buying new armor right now, these are the only two you should look into. Everything else is not really worth it. I say stay Sheza if you're going to be someone who grabs Mastery, but Mastery isn't super expensive these days anymore. So you can skip over this, or you can have this as intermediary until you get into your endgame armor. So really quick, once more over, we're going from Renesia directly into Schwarzet, skipping everything in between basically. Now, I will say if you see something cheap, right, like someone selling off some of their cheap old gear, like a cheap Giant, possibly a cheap Grius is their old gear, maybe pick those up. I still say go Schwarzets because that's usually where the better option is here. And these minus resistances they hurt pretty bad, but it is of course leveling gear, so don't worry too much about it. And then you're jumping into Aphetis. Belgrin possibly is an intermediary if necessary, but again, pick these up cheap. Someone selling off theirs they're not using anymore. Don't really build something like this up, it's gonna be pretty expensive. Get into your Aphetis gear, and at Aphetis you can decide, am I going to go hard into Eclairu or am I going to Ajax? And that's kind of like your progression path of what's going to be important. A lot of these are going to be basically if you are buying these things off the market, you've already leveled beforehand, or if you're trying to go through the game itself, pick up some ones, you know, hand-me-downs or used, the things they're not using anymore. The only thing to keep in mind here is the PHANTASY. There are red boxes where you can get one of each of these. They actually, did I say here? Nope, first floor, no tower. The combat sections, actually don't mention it here, but there's a red box in Steel where you can get one of each of these that come with mastery on them already, so those are super solid. If you're curious about that, you can just YouTube a video. If I remember, I'll try to leave a link in the video description to it, but they're really, really easy to find. Moving on, we'll talk about gunblades. Now this one is a bit more nuanced. So with gunblades, we only have so many of them available to us, and because there is the ability to trade in for these gunblades, there are certain ones you're going to want to get and certain ones you're going to probably want to pass over. So if you're someone who's playing ahead of time and you've been able to gather up all of these tickets, you can say that, yeah, maybe you should grab some of these gunblades as your leveling process. However, the fastest way to level the new class is not going to be playing as a new class. You're going to be playing with it as your subclass. And if you really want to use a gunblade, then hey, feel free, because you'll be at max level or close to it with your main class, and then all of your subclass experience will be from will be getting half of the main experience that you're getting. So definitely worth it. I would absolutely recommend just doing this leveling method and doing SEGA yellows, because you will blaze through leveling very, very quickly. I plan to do the very much the same with a few classes that I have at 65. I'll be essentially playing that class at 65 with Slayer at level 1, leveling it up a bunch, and whenever the main class hits 70, I'll swap it to a different one and continue getting Slayer all the way up to 65, and then when Slayer hits 65, I'll swap it to the main and push the rest of the classes all the way through. So as far as weapons, what you should be using, it's a no-brainer. There are two weapons that are going to matter for the most, and that is going to be a Christia, the Christia weapon. The reason behind the Christia is because of its PP economy. It's super, super useful as far as PP economy is concerned. It's got a solid amount of damage. Its potency that it has in its potential is solid. It's 27%. You don't really need a whole lot when you're just farming ads and things like that. It doesn't lock you to needing the subclass of Force. You're able to just use this weapon, regen PP very easily, and you don't have to worry too much about anything else. This weapon has been useful since it came out and passed. I always recommend keeping one of these on hand. That way you're not forced into swapping classes. Even if you do choose to swap classes, this just means that your PP economy is absolutely insane. And it's something that you don't really get rid of. Everything else on this list is something that you will eventually outgrow. So because of how expensive it is to upgrade gear in this game currently, the cost of unlocking potentials, and then of course the cost of limit breaking and things like that, not even augmenting, because augmenting isn't that expensive. It's everything else that costs quite a bit of money by default. All of that is a waste or kind of a sink when you go into these things. So I'm gonna personally recommend skip Trunkle, skip Tenebris, skip Effulgent, at least for now. It's possible these may be useful in the future because we will be getting level 6 of their potentials, but for the moment, if you're someone who thinks this might be useful, go ahead and just sit one off on the side, because of its potential is critical hit rate, which is going to be very good for us. Sit this off on the side and we'll have to see, but I wouldn't recommend jumping to it at this moment. If you're someone like believes that it's possible it's going to be good, then hey, go for it. But right now, your big ticket item, get your Christia, set it up for your your AoE spam weapon, and then grab a Justitian. Now the reason I say a Justitian is because the Neos Astrian, though stronger when you're not fighting a light enemy, is weaker than the Neos Justitian at Fixa Fatale 3. Now this might be a situation where it's more beneficial for you to go Termina because of the way things are set up, and that requires me to work a little bit into numbers. So if you lose me, feel free to ask in the comments, or again, hop into Discord. You're more than welcome to ask over my Discord. There'll be a link in the video description to that. But essentially the way this works out is because Slayer seems to have access to so much crit comparatively to every other class in the game currently right now, the Fixa use on Slayer may end up being different. And this is the way the formula kind of works out. So when you're looking at Fixa Termina versus Fixa Fatale, which is crit chance versus crit damage, Termina being crit damage and Fixa Fatale being crit chance, the sweet spot, or the golden number you're looking for, is 50%. If you're over 50, that's when Termina starts to pull ahead. If you're under 50%, that's when fatals tends to still be stronger. So if you're going to reach over 50% crit chance without using a weapon with fatal, you're better off using Termina. Reason for it is because Termina is actually higher than fatal. For example, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. Just because you have a fatal 3 weapon and a Termina 3 weapon, you're not getting the same amount of that, that amount chance. That's why it's a bit different. Now, if we're talking not Termina and fatal and just crit chance versus crit damage, a 1-for-1 ratio, then you're looking at a 65% chance, meaning you need at least 65% crit chance to see crit damage start weighing out being stronger than crit chance does on its own. Because of course, crits do have increased damage. That's how the formula ends up working out. All right, so that was a lot of numbers. All of that to essentially say the Neos Justitian Gunblade, because you can get fixes with it a bit more easily, or at the very least, it'll pop up on the market, is likely going to be a better choice. Unless you just get super lucky with getting a drop of a Neos Astrian Gunblade that happens to have fixa. Well, like I mentioned, in this case, it's going to be probably fatal or Termina. Unless you happen to have one that is fixa Termina, in general, fixa fatal 3 or fixa Termina 3, I believe Gunblade will end up being stronger than the Neos Justitian variety. Keep in mind that just because it's off element does not mean that you aren't getting any elemental damage off of that weapon. The elemental damage still gives you, I believe, about 10%, even off element. If it's on element, it's I believe 15%, and off element does give you 10% increased damage as well, still from the element itself. Which I feel like at that point, why bother even having element coded? Just give it its base damage and then have the element be a 5% differential. It'd be much easier for people to understand that, but I digress. That is a conversation for another day. Either way, it is definitely worth it if you happen to get a fixa on the Neos Justitian. And then currently any of the boss fights that matter at the moment are weak to light. That will be changing in the future. We'll have some of these that are weak to dark, but I mean, realistically, it's the strongest elemental weapon we have, and then even at certain fix amounts is stronger than the strongest base damage weapon that we have. So something to keep in mind. However, it is worth mentioning that we are getting rank 6 of potentials, meaning that certain potentials might end up skyrocketing back into the meta. Something like, let's say, for example, Gunblaze does have a crit rate chance on it in its potential, making it a possible contender for being used. Granted, it's going to have to contend with things like 34% potency and more base damage, as well as, because this class already has so much crit chance as it is, the extra crit chance isn't going to be as useful as it would normally. However, it is still something to keep in mind moving forward. So if you're someone who believes that there's a possibility of Gunblaze possibly being more important, it's worth grabbing. But if I was someone who is gathering weapons for starting Slayer now, what I would do would just be grabbing a Christia Gunblade and then purchasing a Neos Justitian Gunblade, probably a base one, and look at getting a fixa increase later. At the moment, you don't need to worry about anything else. You can pick up a Neos Astrian Gunblade. However, if you do happen to find a fixa on sale for a low enough amount that works out for you, it is not worth it. If we're in a situation where, let's say, for example, there's not enough crit chance for Termina to win out and it's going to be fixa fatal, we'll be in a case where fixa fatal 3 is way stronger, fixa fatal 2 is about equal, slightly stronger than a Neos Astrian Gunblade, and fixa attack, I think 3 or 4 is stronger than a Neos Astrian Gunblade. So if you're curious about these sort of comparisons, I did make an entire video covering all of this. We'll go ahead and make sure to mention it, hopefully in a pinned comment or in the video description. Just keep an eye out for either of those locations. But like I said, my choices would definitely be the Neos Justitian as well as the Christia Gunblades. Those two are realistically the only two you're going to need and you're going to ever use moving forward. Anything else, I personally believe, is a waste of your points. Grab the camos, grab all the resources you can. If you really just want something extra, I would say my bets would be in Effulgent, Tenebris. Tenebris would be the thing you can trade in for. And then possibly Gunblaze, maybe. Trunkle will have no uses. Kuklofis is just a weaker variant of a weapon you don't really need to go for. Kaiser, please put your Kaiser away. Your crit chance is not going to ever be, it's not going to matter. It doesn't matter if it goes up to level 6. Unless level 6 increases its potency by some ungodly amount, just put your Kaisers away. Small little bonus, I did actually grab those two weapons. I grabbed them before I even recorded the video, but I figured I'd show you guys how I augmented them. The Christia already comes with, I I don't think it's Pedestal. It comes with a different soul, Dollar Soul. Dollar, Mastery, Precision, and Secreta, along with, I believe it was Trippable. I swapped it for Doable, and it's 2.7%. You can swap this for like Gigas and you'd be fine. Swap this for Pedis just because I wanted to have, I didn't want to deal with the minus percentage resistances whatsoever, and I feel like it's fine to drop some HP for that personally. Not a huge deal. And I didn't really want to buy capsules. Don't skimp on Secreta. I know some people are like, oh, well, you know, more crit chance means we're not going to care about potency floor. You still will care about potency floor. You will miss crits, and if you do miss crits, you will be very, very sad. We're not in a 100% meta yet. You cannot drop your potency floor. Soon, but not yet. And that's it. That's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to toss them in the comments below. Let me know what you guys have gotten set up for yourselves on your end. Make sure to grab those camos. They look sick. But like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everyone. Peace out.